Hi, everyone. My name's Rachel. I'm from Wellfound's product support team. Um, a few people are going to keep rolling in, I think, at this time, but I'm just going to slowly introduce what Wellfound is all about and what this webinar is all about. So today we're going to talk about how to tailor your applications for modern recruiting tools. There's quite a few people from our Wellfound team here with us, including Senya and Megan and Alejandro and Naj from our product support, operations, and candidate ops teams. Briefly, I'll just talk about what Wellfound is. Wellfound is a jobs marketplace for both candidates and recruiters. It helps people connect for their next job opportunities and to help grow teams. We work mostly with startups, but we've expanded into larger tech companies. We've been around for a really long time. We're formerly AngelList Talent. In the last year, we've helped facilitate 1.1 million connections between startups and job seekers. So we're really excited to share Wellfound with you and also just to share candidate tips and to help you along this process. A few things to take note of is that we do have a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom settings. So if you have any questions during the talk, please feel free to ask our team and also WriteSea's team. We have Steph in our group today who has answers that will expand on what Brandon is going to talk about. So between our two teams, we're hoping we'll be able to get the answers that you need. But also, if we don't get your answer, please note that we're recording them. We're going to send an email follow-up with some handy resources for you to help you along with the next steps. And any questions we don't get to or can't answer promptly, because there are quite a lot of people joining us today, we'll be answering in that email as well. So I would love to introduce our speaker, Brandon Mitchell. We're really excited to have him here with us today. He has so many insights for the candidate experience, as well as on the reverse, the recruiter's perspective on how they receive applicants' information. So Brandon is the founder and CEO of WriteSea. It's a suite of AI and human career mobility tools that helps job boards, hiring platforms, and associations unlock revenue and elevate their member experience by offering white labeled career services. So he helps both companies that are recruiting and also job seekers make those connections. Over the past 7 years, Brandon has helped thousands of job seekers land their next opportunity and trained resume writers to scale their businesses. Prior to launching WriteSea, Brandon worked as a technology consultant for PwC, a global accounting and advisory powerhouse. He has been featured in Forbes, Yahoo Finance, Earn Your Leisure, Black Wealth Renaissance, and LinkedIn for his career and technology insights. He's a go-to resource for automation and scalability, and he's also passionate about helping small businesses succeed and frequently facilitates corporate workshops for Fortune 500 companies like Google, Mr. Cooper, and Morgan Stanley. So we're so excited to have Brandon with us. I'm going to hand off the presentation to him, and at the end, we'll circle back for questions.
Excellent. Rachel, thank you so much for the warm introduction. And I am super excited to be here. Hello, everybody. I'd love to keep this super interactive over the next hour as we dive into some of the mysteries of the job market, of the job search, of the applicant tracking systems. And so please stay till the end so that you can soak up all the tips, tricks, and insights. And as we kind of get to know each other, I would love for everybody to just drop into the chat if you can. Where are you joining from? Whether it's New York or Singapore or Malaysia or Pakistan, would love to know where we have people coming in from today as I kind of pull up my presentation and we kind of jump into it. Okay. Got it. Okay, where do we have? Okay, Colorado, Washington, Portland. Wow, you guys are going faster than I can keep up with. So people from all over, this is phenomenal. I'm really excited for today. So I'm gonna jump into that. And the way that I like to do this, and we'll kind of go through some of this relatively fast. So I am from New York, so I'll kind of preface that. But would love to launch a quick poll to see just kind of where everybody is at. So as we kind of jump into it, we'd just love to know, in terms of the ATS, we'd love to just kind of quick understanding as we kind of level set before we jump into it. How does everybody feel right now in terms of how they think they understand about the ATS and How does it work? We'd love to kind of get a pulse on what people are thinking. So I'll give you about 20 seconds to answer that quick poll. Wow. Okay, it's jumping in. So the consensus right now is that a lot of people do not understand, about 77%, which is really exciting. So as we go through this, I'm hoping to be able to give you all a lot of the tips and tricks and techniques to be able to better understand. So about 80% so far. So awesome. That is really, really good to know. So you all are in the right place. So let's go ahead and share the results. Okay. Wow. Insane. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So like Rachel mentioned, my name is Brandon Mitchell, co-founder and CEO of WriteSea.com. I have almost a decade of experience in tech, product, career consulting, career management. I've helped thousands of job seekers from all walks of life essentially break into their next career, whether it's a student right out of college or a C-suite or a board level. And so just a ton of experience working with job boards, working with applicant tracking systems, and really trying to essentially help people understand this world of the job search, as it's really, really hard. And sometimes you really don't know what you don't know. And so hopefully we can jump into some of that and distill a lot of information relatively quickly that you all can kind of take and run with. And that's really the goal. So for today's webinar, we have a few things that I'd love to touch on. And if there's anything that doesn't get touched on, feel free to put that in the question and answer. We'll be able to get to it, as well as spend some time at the end for more deeper questions. So we'll talk about the ATS basics, really go through that, understanding the formatting style. So we'll go through some examples of resumes or CVs, depending on where you're calling from, and what makes a good CV, what makes a bad resume, understanding some keywords, developing a targeted resume, and then we'll do some Q&A. So if that all sounds good and you guys are ready, please drop ready in the chat so we can go ahead and jump into it. Oh, everybody's ready. I love it. So let's keep the energy high. Okay, great. So I hope this is not shocking for everybody here today, but the reality of the situation is that over 75% of resumes that are submitted are never seen by a human. And the reason for that is that a lot of these companies, whether it be Fortune 500 or Fortune 5000, they are getting a ton of job seekers that are submitting resumes. They are applying to these jobs, but the technology really is there to assist them in terms of being able to sort through the massive amounts of applicants. And although everybody wants a job, typically, whether it be 1,000 applications per job that are submitted, there's only one that person is going to get the job. And so for a recruiter, for a hiring manager, the job of sifting through all those resumes are really hard, and that's why they employ it. And so although 75% of resumes are not seen, that does not mean that you don't have a chance. And we're going to talk through how you can better optimize for that. And so it is a competition. And so when you are competing, it's really important to understand what you need to do to be able to win. Now, the statistics show that 68% of large companies and 35% of small companies use the ATS. This is about this has been increasing over the last kind of decade or so. As you know, if you think about 30 years ago, it was a different process. You might be able to walk into an employer, hand them your resume, and then be able to get a call back. But that's not how it works today, as you all may be aware, especially if you've been spending some time on Wellfound looking for jobs or any of the other amazing talent marketplaces and job boards. But the reality is that understanding how to optimize for the ATS is going to put you in a position of power, just because if you are not getting through, then you are essentially wasting some time, and time is money. And again, we all want to be able to break through and land the interviews that we're looking for. And that's really the goal of today, is to be able to kind of talk through that. Because without understanding how this works, you would really be at a disadvantage in terms of how you are positioning yourself for success. And that's what we want everybody to be successful. And so let's jump into the basics to learn the in and outs of the ATS. And the first thing that we're going to do is really go through a resume, and I'm going to break it down in terms of why this resume is ATS optimized and certain things that it has that are key. But before we do that, like I said, the ATS is here for a few reasons, right? And it's to collect, filter, compare, but it's also to score. And so there's a few key things that you all need to understand in terms of the resume. You might have heard about this on LinkedIn or in just different articles that you may be reading, but it is true, right? In terms of the keywords and the phrases that you're using, it is being search indexed and filtered on. Competencies, skills, and experience. And so whether they're looking at how long you've worked in a specific job to be able to, in certain roles, understand your years of experience without you just saying, hey, I have 7 years of experience on your resume, the ATS is able to understand that. your job history, to see your career progression, and whether you started as an analyst, you worked your way up to a senior analyst, then to a manager, to director. It understands and extrapolates that educational backgrounds. And so things that are on your resume or your CV are really pertinent because it is literally being looked at and analyzed, and every single word matters when it comes to putting together a standout resume that is going to get through the actual systems. And so there's a lot of mystery here because people say, oh, well, yeah, I put it together. I just use it to match the actual job description or what have you. But to really understand this is to understand that like every single word matters, and you need to be super critical about how you're putting that together. And so the process typically is, yes, like you're going to submit an application and your resume, and it typically is a black box. You don't know what happens afterwards, whether you get a call back or you don't get a call back. And it kind of puts you in an uncomfortable situation. But understanding that, yes, like it gets parsed, and parsed means that it gets broken down into 1,000 bits and pieces and stored into the system. So if they're looking for, hey, how can I figure out every resume that met a 70% match and had the specific, keywords in there, I want to pull them. That's what they're doing to make their jobs easier. And so the better that you can make a recruiter or hiring manager's job, the easier you'll have it in terms of getting back. And so if you don't have the right keywords, or the formatting is not working, it will literally make or break your chances of having a human read it. And that's what we want. We want to be able to get in front of the hiring manager, the recruiter, or what have you, so that we can get through to the system. And so that's the key, right? And so as we go through this, just think in the mindset of, okay, well, if I was writing my resume, how am I going to organize or style this so that it is going to be readable, strategic, and attractive, so that it's actually helping you get to the desired roles while remaining appropriate for the specific industry. And there's a lot of caveats to this, but there are general rules of thumb that we want to follow and abide by. And so as we kind of get into this, let's talk about some of the choices, and like I said, look at a resume so that we can look at what is necessarily a good example. And so I pulled this resume, not only because it's a beautiful resume in terms of some of the color pops and things like that, but it has some really, really key information that we'll go through and take a second to look at as to why this resume is ATS optimized. The first thing is that when it comes to the header, which is typically the top third of a resume, so I don't know if you can see my cursor, but the first third of a resume is really key, because that is where a hiring manager recruiter's attention is going to gravitate towards, but also the ATS parsers read from a top-down perspective, and there's key things that need to be there, whether it's the name at the top, which is the best. Sometimes there's funky resume formats that have it at the right, and we'll talk about that shortly, but city, state is key. Phone number, email, LinkedIn, and then having a clearly defined professional experience section is key. This resume, as you can tell, does not have any photos, and we'll talk about what are the things that are pure X's that these ATS systems don't like to look at. But there's no photos, there's no funky boxes or icons or things like that that would throw off a system. And then there's also clearly defined education and certification sections, skills and competencies, additional experience, etc. And it's visually put together in a way that as the system is scanning it, it can extrapolate what bullet points are with what jobs, and it will understand the dates and the times. Now, additionally, having a summary is key, because you are able to put additional bullet points and words and phrases within the summary that would allow you to also get some of the keywords hit for. So not only can you leverage the specific summary, but you can also have the right words in there. And so as these systems are scanning your resume, it's literally looking at everything. And what we see a lot of times is that a lot of job seekers might put an objective statement. We always say opt for the summary. But this is a resume example, without getting into all the weeds, that is clean. It doesn't have the things that would just throw it off immediately. And so before we kind of jump to other things, we want to make sure that you're understanding and can see a really good format and what that looks like. And so when we think about, well, what are problematic design choices? Boxes and tables. I know that a lot of you are like, hey, I'm going to put the resume together by myself and I'm going to spend a few hours on it. And that's absolutely fine. But thinking through, what should you not do? So no photos, no wonky fonts, which we see a lot. I've seen resumes with like purple fonts and pictures of dogs on the resumes. And although that is great, we do not want those type of resumes going through the ATS systems, because you will end up in a boardroom with a ton of HR professionals giggling about what you have going on. So we want to avoid that. So those are problematic design choices. So to jump into an example of things that we see often, and to kind of talk about, and again, if this is a resume that you have and you've been submitting, this is not a dig at you. This is just to educate on what you may or may not do. Now, although that is a phenomenal photo, the headshots in terms of a resume can throw off the ATS systems, and a few ATS systems that are widely used. If you want to do any additional research, there is iCIMS, there's Sovereign as a resume parser, there's Greenhouse, there's Bullhorn. So if you want to look into even deeper, you can see, well, sometimes they publish certain articles and guides. Those are some of the ATS systems, but again, headshots will throw it off. And so depending on where your headshot is, when the ATS system reads your resume, it might put, let's say, your work experience where your name is, or where your city and state, it might have, your skill section. And so if it parses your resume like that, it's going to immediately be a red flag and turn it off. So we don't want to have these icons because it can throw it off, and or these inserted lines. So as you can see above the work experience, there's a random line there. Things like that visually may look really good, but again, it can throw it off. And so to be able to be the most cognizant about this, let's not do that at all. Let's look at another example. So again, this looks clean, right, at first glance, but there's certain things that at the human eye we might not look at, but in terms of how this was constructed, it's key. So if you look at the relevant skill section and the professional skill section, this is actually an inserted column, which is interesting because you can't see that, but depends on how the format was constructed. This would throw off the complete applicant tracking system, and it would not, although the skills are there, it may not actually categorize this is a skill in a skill section. It might say, oh, well, your work experience is advertising, or your work experience is a professional summary. And so the best way is to not do that at all. And at the top, the gray place, this little gray box is actually inserted. And so although visually this looks like it was put together the right way, on the actual formatting side, it's not good at all. And so just being very cognizant of that you could have the best content on your resume, but if the formatting is off, you will still not get through. And I think that's a tough cookie for a lot of people to swallow. They're like, oh my God, my resume looks phenomenal, and it could be visually appealing, but if it's not constructed the right way from a formatting perspective, you might not have a lot of luck. Now, there is a caveat. Depending on the roles that you're applying for, whether it's like UX design or if it's marketing, you could get away with a little bit of a more creative style in terms of your resume. But general rule of thumb is to get through is that you might want to go on the side of a little more professional that doesn't have that, just to give you a little bit of a higher score. Now, if you're sending a resume via email and there's a personal relationship, or there's at least a warm introduction that has been made, you can opt for a resume that's a little bit more designed. But the rule of thumb, if you're submitting without actually talking to somebody, you don't want to do things like that. And so talking about some design options that you should do and that are okay, you can use the shading feature, which can give a little bit of a border, which is okay. Professional colors to stick to blue, black, and gray. Again, I would not submit teal and purple words on a resume. Bolding and italics are great. You can do all caps in certain instances. Make sure that your fonts, the fonts that are read really, really well with the ATS, are Arial, Times, Scaramount, and Calibri, Cambria. Those are really, really good. And just consistent bullet points. You don't know how many resumes that we've seen that are essentially just full of paragraphs, and it's like 4 or 5 pages. And so those are the types of resumes that don't work really, really well. So we want to avoid those at all costs. And so this is a really clean example of a one-page resume that has a lot of great information. It's optimized for the ATS. These are the types of resumes that we want to see a lot of. And it can take a little bit to put something like this together, especially understanding like how it's constructed from start to finish. But these are the types of resumes that we see work out really, really well, and that you want to err on the side of, and not just, kind of pick a random template online and have at it. And so that's, again, a lot of people may not say that, but I'll be the first to say that we've had so many instances where it's just an amazing candidate with an amazing experience, but they're just getting 0 interviews because ultimately the resume was not constructed in the right way, and they're just not getting past the screening systems. And with the advent of AI and technology, these screening systems are getting smarter, faster, more efficient. And so it's really imperative that you're sticking to what's needed to be able to break through and kind of get through. So let's take a pause. We'd love to run a quick poll just to understand when's the last time that you all updated your resume? Just really curious. because we find that most people don't update their resume every 6 months. So let's take 10 seconds, another 10 seconds to quickly answer that. Would love to just understand where everybody's at with their resume update journey. Okay, I'm going to end this in 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, wow. Okay, great. Yeah. So what it looks like is about 70% in the last month. So it looks like a lot of you all are actively job seeking, which is great, which means that you are thinking about your resume. We got about 30% was over 6 months ago, which is okay depending on if you are not actively job seeking. But if you are actively job seeking, you definitely want to update your resume so that this would be really, really relevant. And just a quick, before we jump into like, just another quick one. How confident do you feel in terms of your resume's ability? And I'm sure a lot of you have been submitting some applications on Wellfound and kind of perusing through some platforms, but where are we all at in terms of our confidence? Okay, I'll let this end in 3, 2, 1. Okay, got it. And so really interesting results. So I'd say about 20/80 in terms of confident and not sure. And so I'm hoping that some of these tips and tricks will be able to kind of get you all in the right mindset so that you are at least leaving with some nuggets that you can use to be able to better optimize what you have going on. So, okay, great. So we need to get the confidence up. So that's the key. Confidence is key, and as well as making sure that you're doing the right things so that when you are submitting these applications, and if it is taking 20 or 30 minutes, you're hopefully hearing back. So let's jump back into keyword selection and placement. I think this is a hot topic and one that is sometimes a big misser in terms of what are the right words and how do we embed things in the actual bullet points in the resume. And so just taking a second to define keywords. Keywords are words and phrases, whether it's skills, tools, competencies, and verbs that are found in a resume that should match a job description or a set of job descriptions. And the more keywords that are included in a resume that the employer expects to see, the greater chance that you'll have to score a little bit higher in the ATS system. And so a lot of ways in which you can do this is you can take some time. Obviously, if you're on Wellfound, you can go look at a lot of these job descriptions. And what I like to do is I like to reverse engineer it. I'll take a look at a few different job descriptions for, let's say, a software engineer role, and I would like to compare them to see what are the overlapping skill sets that these roles have. And if you're starting to find skill sets that you don't have, well, those are clear indications that you may need to upskill yourself and go and find whether it's I need to learn like TypeScript or OpenAI or etc. So those are really, really small things to do. But just pause and reflect, right? Like as you're going through this, like what are the skills of the area expertise, right? Like what are they mentioning? And a lot of times I feel like we just apply, but we don't take the necessary time to sit there and collate this information, reflect on it, and look at it. And so I really implore everybody to truly read through the applications before you're applying for it so that you can understand if you're even matching up. And that's where some of the tweaking can come in to make sure that you are hitting on the right keywords and the skill sets. But obviously, like you must have the skill sets, right? So what you don't want to do is say, okay, I'm just going to put all the keywords in that I see on all these job descriptions, and you don't actually have the skill sets. And then you might find yourself in an uncomfortable situation in an interview. So honesty is key, but these are the small things that you do want to do. And so once you've located the keywords and you've compared it, the goal is to understand broader at the market, like what are, whether it's different industries, whether it's fintech or real estate tech or future of work, or what have you, or it's clean tech or energy tech. Look at what they're looking for, because different industries have different things that they're looking for and different seniority levels, right? And so if you're looking to go laterally from, a manager to a senior manager, there might be certain things that may not be like skill sets, but work experience that they're looking for. So truly understand that so we can optimize what we have on our resume and at least speak to the things that they're looking at in terms of what they're looking for in that next role, so that you have a clear understanding of how to position yourself. And so what I did is I took 2 job listings, and I wanted to talk about this for a little bit to look at, okay, what are the keywords that we're finding across 2 different job descriptions for a software engineer role. And what we found is that there are certain things that stuck out. And this was just a quick sample size to just show why this is super important, right? So 1, software engineer, engineering experience, maintain backend, writing code, assisting product team, maintaining records, confidence writing. And so across 2 job descriptions, I'm sure if I looked at 3 or 4, we'd see, again, these commonalities. if I was constructing a resume for a software engineer, I would make sure that in my resume, if I had these specific skill sets, not only are they woven into the summary section, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but even in the bullet points, I'm speaking to accomplishments and success stories and key achievements that tie to these specific things. Because it's one thing to hit on the keyword, but it's another major thing to be talking through how were you successful in executing this? And in about 4 or 6 bullet points, which is most of the time the average that you want to have on a resume, how can we talk through this so that we're putting ourselves in the best light and we're highlighting the key things that the employers are looking for? Because a lot of times when I talk about resume writing and job seeking, it's not necessarily about you, it's about what are they looking for. And so a lot of times it's about me, I want to get the job, but just take a second back to think about what is the employer looking for and how am I a best fit in terms of what I've done. And if you're not a great fit, that's an opportunity to essentially find more ways to be able to upskill yourself so that you are prepared for those roles. And so if you look at just job listing A, we found some really interesting, unique keywords, right? So things that stuck out were Python, JavaScript, C++, and bachelor's in computer science when I looked at, okay, well, not just shared, but what are the things that were unique? And so if I was applying for this role and I had Python or JavaScript as a skill set, I would make sure that I had this, on my resume. And if you have a skills section, it's good to list all of your skills, which most people do. But if I know that a job that I'm looking for is more JavaScript heavy, I'm going to talk about that in terms of not just my skill section, but I might weave it into my summary and into some of the bullet points. And then job listing B was really interesting because they spoke more about SQL and Heroku, and they also mentioned bilingual. And so that's a really interesting thing that maybe if I don't have that skill set or if I'm not bilingual in the language that they're looking for, this may or may not be the best fit. And so this is why it's extremely important to kind of compare, to look at, to really take a step back and to understand, well, does this job require a master's degree? Does it require no degree or just an associate's degree? Because the key is that you don't want to waste your time. And if the hiring manager is literally running a Boolean search for specific things like master's degree for that specific role, and you don't have that, like that may or may not, be a deal breaker. I would say sometimes to apply, especially if they say they're open, but these are certain things that it's really important so that you're maximizing your chances and that you're being stored in the ATS system the right way. And so I think a lot of times we just jump into applying, but we just don't take enough time to research and really have a good game plan. And so I always say that when you start your job search, you're looking at a job search, you need to have a goal in mind, you need to do the right research, and then you need to actively apply it so that you're maximizing your success. And so when you think about embedding your keywords, right, not just finding them out and identifying them, embed them in your bullet points, make sure that you have a competency or skills list that's key. Again, some of this you might have heard a ton, but you'd be surprised. We do so many resume reviews and we look at so many resumes, and I've coached so many job seekers, and it's a clear similarity between like your entry level and even your C-suites. A lot of folks do not have this. And so these are things that we want to make sure that you're leaving with today, that you understand. And to avoid the fluffy buzzwords, I think getting straight to the point in terms of a resume is really helpful, not just for the actual employer, so they're not reading through like fluffy language that just sounds good, but really think about action-oriented, results-driven language. And if you can make it quantifiable, whether it's numbers, percent signs, and things like that, to bring more context to what you've done, that really helps. I've hired dozens of people, and these are the things that even we see in today's day and age. And so wanted to jump into a quick summary to kind of talk about how this client, and I believe this is like a business development client, how they kind of woven the right keywords into their summary. So you see business development is here. We talk about metrics like strategic selling, right? Like that's potentially a keyword. If you look at produce long-term partnerships, right? That might be a keyword that they're looking for in terms of an actual ATS scan, and things like generating record-breaking funds, client retention. Like these are the keywords that they may be looking for. And so that's how client retention is mentioned here again in core competencies. And so this is a really good summary section. And again, these are things that it takes time to write this, and it is more of an art. But these are the types of things that we want to make sure that you all are empowered to understand, because if you don't know, then again, you might just have like a one-liner or you might not have any summary. But these are the things that most people don't know. And if you're not doing this, then you're not putting yourself in a position for having an advantage. And so let's take a look at professional experience. Like, how did this director of client success potentially weave in, the right skill sets, right? So client success, that's what they might be looking for. So client support, right, is like right at the top. Accountability is right here too, right? So that might be or maintaining key relationships. And so these are the things that you don't want to just like write kind of what you did. You want to talk about the impact and lead with any metrics that you can, right? Achieve a 92% client retention rate, like managing 3 million in renewal revenue. That is pretty impressive, and it's hitting on the keywords. And so any opportunities that you do have to really kind of hone in on that, that's what's going to put you in a step ahead, because there's a lot of resumes that are going to be submitted that are just very vanilla, that don't talk to success stories. And this whole process, identifying the right things, thinking introspectively about what you did throughout a year, taking some time to go look at any performance reviews that you've had, like these are the things that you should really be doing when you think about starting a job search and writing a resume, and make sure that it's optimized, because it all matters. Every single word that you're putting in this document is being, again, searched, indexed, and filtered. And so being really cognizant about that will put you in a step ahead of some of the competition. And so again, just a quick example, let's say you were interested in a product coordinator or a product manager or a project manager role, right? Like, do not write things like serve as a team player. You should use stronger verbiage, right? So you can say that, you can say collaborate. Do speak directly towards an accomplishment. And we spoke about that a little bit. That maybe includes teamwork, because as a project coordinator, you are working cross-functionally. But if it's like a direct, like a role that might be a little bit more independent, like sales, like you can talk through like things that you actually brought up. But the key is to make sure that it's impactful and you're really speaking towards the key aspects of what you've done. Because if you're not, like, these are the things that, again, if other people are, they may be getting a little bit more interviews than you are. The second thing is, don't write bland bullet points, that you're a goal-oriented person with like leadership skills. Like, again, it's very cliche. And depending on the roles that you're looking for at a director or maybe a senior director level, depending on who you are, like, it's given that if you're applying for a director or a managing director level role, you have leadership skills, right? And so the key is to focus on demonstrating the things that you've done, whether it's exceeding monthly KPIs and annual goals, communicating goals with ex-employees, monitoring progress, and providing feedback resulting in XYZ. And so these are the things that, again, I feel like a lot of people, when we look at, like, they've heard about it, but unless you're being directly told this is what you should do, you might just go out there and just put any old thing together and say, oh, I put my resume together, I'm going to submit it, let's see what happens. Like, that is preparing yourself for failure. And so we want to make sure that you all have the right tools and techniques so that when you're leaving this webinar, you're jazzed up and you know exactly what some of the things that you can be doing so that you can make your CV better or work with someone that, can help you do that. And basically, you need to communicate your expertise, right? Because again, at the end of the day, we want a human to be able to read it. Like, hiring is human, HR is human. And the key is that, like, you are a real person that's submitting your real resume and you want to get real results. And so just make sure that, again, when you're thinking through something like familiar with Salesforce, yes, that might be true, but use Salesforce to track and monitor and deliver X. And so just really flipping the equation so that you're thinking more about the value that you bring to the table and how that resonates with said job description. And so the last piece that I want to go through, and I hope a lot of this has been super helpful so far, is just giving you all a clear roadmap on how you can take a lot of this information, which I know I'm throwing a lot at you really, really fast, because, this is a topic that we can talk about for literally hours and hours and hours on end. I kind of get really jazzed about this type of stuff. But I want to give you a good framework if you're literally starting from scratch, or you feel like you're not confident at all, like, how do you just take all this and put it together? We can go through some really actionable steps, and then we're going to wrap up and have some time for questions and things like that. So if you think about just putting it together, like, how do you apply the formats and the keywords and the best practices that Brandon's given me today to kind of run with, so that you can create this really, really good resume, or at least update what you have if you're not getting the results that you're looking for. And even if you are getting results, but it's not the best results you're looking for, these are things that you can do to kind of, maybe have a little bit more success. So again, the first thing is to be able to open this up, right? Open up the document. Like, you have to start somewhere. Sometimes we might over fantasize and over think about what to do, and now I'm gonna do it, but then you just never open up the document. So you have to just get started, right? So create an outline, think about your contact information, make sure that that's updated. And again, key things there, don't have any really like weird or wonky like email addresses, so have a professional email. Make sure that the key sections are there. So don't just call it like experience, call it professional experience, right? Don't just call it skills. You can call it technical skills, right? Have the right headers, because again, all these headers are being parsed, and the naming convention that you use for these headers is really important, and the organization as well, right? So if you are a entry-level graduate or you're just starting your career, typically you might want to have your education section a bit more at the top because it's more relevant. But if you're more on the director or the senior director level, you want to really start with your core competencies, your summary, and then your work experience, because that's more relevant depending on where you're at in your career journey. And then just a little hack, make sure that you have Grammarly added, because Grammarly is great, so that you don't have any spelling errors or typos, because that is a clear no. Even if you do get through the ATS system, if a human looks at your resume and they're just like massive typos and grammatical errors, then they're looking and thinking about, well, if you can't spend the time to really put a good resume together that's proof, that's proofed and everything, well, then how can I trust you to deliver a report? Or how can I trust you to manage a team if you can't take the level of detail to your resume? So again, all these things matter. The second thing is to just reflect, right? So after you open up your document, your answers to some of these questions will be key, right? Like, where do I want to take this resume, or what type of roles am I looking and am I targeting? What industry do I want to work for, right? And again, this can be a little bit more philosophical, but can also help you really think about how you weave into your bullet points, into your summary, that experience. And because like in today's day and age, with the average tenure being two or 3 years at a job, you may have experience that spans across 5 or 6 industries, but honing in on that is key. So you have a focus. Like if you want a job in fintech, like you should be targeting fintech, right? If you want a job in like energy tech, you should target energy tech, or like it's or it's AI, or it's mobility tech. Like think about that. What do you want the reader to understand about you? What's my key thing that I bring to a new employer? And I'm sure you all have this innate superpower inside of you, and we want to make sure that that's extrapolated and that's understood without even talking to you, so that when they do talk to you, they're just like, wow, like this is exactly like I saw the resume, I saw the CV, like this is why I thought that this person was a great person to interview. And again, this can be communicated. I mean, you can also communicate some of this in a cover letter as well. And I will always say that having a cover letter for every single role is a hack. But we're just thinking about the resume. These are things that you should reflect on. And then again, once you reflect, you have to do the research, right? So go on Wellfound, go on what any other job boards that you think have like really, really good jobs, but obviously like Wellfound has everything that you need. Review the job descriptions, read the articles that you can, really understand, look at the company websites. You can use ChatGPT for research. I love it from a research perspective, whether you're just punching in some job descriptions and asking it for the right skill sets, or what are the commonalities, or what are the top 20 skills that for this said industry, for this said role. I stay away from using it to write your bullet points, because sometimes it can be a little bit interesting there. But I would say from a research perspective, it's a really good research tool, and that's what I would use it for as of today, so that you're not just like generating random things that you haven't done and putting on a resume, because that's again a recipe for disaster, and we've seen that happen time and time again. And then obviously fill in the resume, right? So ideally, you have 2 to 6 bullet points for each position. Don't group multiple positions. Begin with action verbs. It's key. Describe the things and accomplishments you've done, and don't just list what you did. You need to talk about your accomplishments and your success stories. And even if you feel like you are in a role that you don't have a lot of those, I promise you, if you work with someone, whether it's a career coach or resume writer, they'll be able to help you understand and extrapolate what things that you have done that are successful and what should you talk up. And I feel like that sometimes this is the hardest part. It's like, okay, I've done so many things in my job. What do I specifically put on the resume? And I know that's the hardest part, but these are the things that you do need to at least start with if you're starting from scratch, to think about, and do not have a job description with like 10 bullet points for your resume, because that's a big turnoff for an employer that's looking at it. And then and just dive a little bit deeper into filling in the resume. Just make sure, again, you'll read it out loud. Like think about, is all the context being provided, right? Are there certain things that I know that this is huge in terms of selling my capabilities, whether it's like managerial experience, whether it's hitting specific goals, or whether it's, making sure that, you're on top of deployments, pushes to a production, just depending on the role that you are in. I'm sure there's certain things that you've done that are just good, whether you get things from the to-do tab in Jira to complete it into code review, really, really fast. Like, what are your core traits, and how can we weave that in that makes sense in an appropriate style? And avoid just jargon and acronyms, because you'd be surprised how many people don't know it. And a hack is that sometimes the hiring manager or the recruiter is not necessarily like the recruiter and or the hiring manager is not the actual manager for the role. And so just be cognizant of that in terms of using like just super industry jargon, because if it's not easily understood, you might be putting yourself at a disadvantage. And then review it, right? And I think that's one of the key things, is that look at formats, make sure that things are bolded, things pop. Again, if you can have any of these bullet points or percent signs, naturally our eyes kind of gravitate towards those things. So it's really, really key that you all do that if you can. And then again, 1 to 2 pages. You don't want to go past 2 pages. Just general rule of thumb for a resume. That's where LinkedIn comes in. LinkedIn is a great platform, whether it's interests or skills or just all of your work experience, right? And so you typically want to have the last 10 years on your resume. That's the rule of thumb. Anything more than that is fair game for a Wellfound profile or for a LinkedIn profile, depending on, having that built out. And to just, again, reflect on like what you bring to the table. And so once that's all done and you think you've really got it into a right place, proofread. And I think you can spend like hours putting this thing together. But again, like that 1 or 2 grammatical errors will say that will kind of put this in a light that's not the most favorable. And at that point, it's like you did all this work for no reason, because someone's going to say, this person could even proofread their work. So I may or may not want to bring them in. And that's happened to me, where there was just incredible talent. But again, I had the little thing in the back of my mind. I was like, well, should I really bring this person in for an interview? If they have all these kind of typos on their resume. And so you just don't want to give the hiring manager or recruiter any reason to disqualify you. And so perfection is sometimes hard to strive for, but when it comes to the job search, you really do want to have the best, most put together documents as possible so that you can have the best success. And so proofread. These are the questions that you should be asking yourself. And when you do all that together and you put all this and you apply all these tips and techniques, the ATS systems will be a little bit easier to kind of break through, and hopefully you'll be getting to a hiring manager a lot faster. And so I hope this was super helpful in terms of being able to think about not only what should you put on your resume, how the ATS works and what they actually do. What are some of the ATSs that you have? You can do some additional research and understanding, like if you're literally, you want to start from scratch, you feel like what you're doing is not working. That is a good framework for doing that so that you can be able to be a little bit more successful, right? And even if you're just improving the amount of interviews that you get by 20%, those are the things that are key. And so, yeah, I hope that was helpful. We're going to transition to something else really, really quickly, and then we'll have some time for questions as well.
Awesome. I'm just going to share a different screen here. There you go. Right. You can see it now, right?
All right. Yeah. So if you found a lot of this helpful, I know, again, the anxiety when it comes to this job search process and having to update your resume and spending the time and not understanding where you stack up and what are the things that you're really good at is probably top of mind for a lot of you all. So one thing that we do want to talk about today, and is a free thing that is available for you all to kind of get a really good understanding of like maybe where your resume stacks up, is that in your Wellfound portal, you should be able to see a place to get a free resume review. So if you go to the actual like where your resume resides, whether in Wellfound, you can get a free resume review that we helped power. And so that's really, really exciting, because Wellfound will be able to kind of look at that, analyze it, and let you know how your resume stacks up, whether it's your missing skill sections, whether it's a scan of your resume today, if there's language that you're using on your resume that is repetitive and that's no good, or it's weak language, or if it's just things that need to be trimmed down. So we want to make sure that everybody gets access to this free resume review, which is huge. And then as you're going through that review, if you feel the need to want to talk to someone a little bit more deeper about it, I think if you go to the next slide, Rachel, there is a way for you to book a consultation with the resume writer / career coach to kind of talk about the review. If you want to, just have some time to just chat with somebody like specifically about your resume. which I think is awesome. I think the fact that you are doing that is great. And then lastly, I know I think we just got a comment in. Someone said, can they hire me to work with them? Sort of, right? So, if you want to work with someone one-on-one on your resume, again, I think the free review is phenomenal. It's going to give you just a really good understanding. But I think recently this is an offer that launched this month with Wellfound. You will actually be able to work with an expert who, whether it's product or design or engineering or marketing or sales or ops or HR, etc. You can work one-on-one as early as today, right after this call, with someone to be able to kind of fix that, all your documents, have that one-on-one experience, and to really be able to take your job searching game to the next level. And I think that those are the things, right? Like, do you need to work with a professional? No, but if you really want that one-on-one experience and just that personal touch to make sure that, like, hey, this is not just me doing this, and I know that this is someone who really understands it, like just as good as me, you all have access to do that. So I would implore everybody to take up the opportunity to work with someone if you can. And I believe there's also like Klarna as well. So there's payment options and things like that if you'd like to kind of choose that option. But yeah, I would love for everybody to be able to level up their job search game, their etiquette, and be able to just take something to kind of run with it. Because again, like, what we don't want you all doing is just having bad resumes that's being submitted, and it's garbage in, garbage out. And so these are the things that we can do to really flip that on its head, and to be able to have a little bbit more success. So yeah, with that said, we'll love to answer some questions and kind of go through this. And I'm super proud of everybody. I feel like we like maintain almost like 100% attendance the entire hour. So I'm hoping that it's been like 47 minutes. So I'm hoping that this has been great. But let's go through some of the questions as well.
Yeah. Brandon, you should be able to also see the Q&A for the questions we haven't answered yet. So if you want to take a quick review there, if there's anything you want to get into, I can also read out questions to you. And then also, I just wanted to make a little brief note that Alejandro has added to the chat a link to how to get the free resume review, which is, I think, a really great way to get started with just going through this process. And I've used the resume review, I've been testing it out, and it's really great for just kind of jogging all these things that Brandon has just talked about, like reminding us of like what to do next and to kind of get you started in the process. So I highly recommend at least trying out getting the free resume review.
Absolutely. So I'll start to kind of get some of these questions right off. So Axel said, realistically, how long should the average candidate expect to spend on personalizing resume templates per job? I'm going to send an answer here. Let me see. But basically, it just depends, right? So if you're just starting out, you might want to spend, if you've created a really good core template, maybe 15 to 30 minutes, customizing it. The thing is that if you were applying for jobs that are a similar job function, so I'll say like, full stack versus back end versus front end developer, right, or engineer, you may or may not need to tweak your resume too much. Like, again, it could give you a little bit of an edge but you do want to have a really good base to start with. But if let's say you are a developer, but you're also an amazing salesperson and you're looking for a sales role, if you're going cross-functional across different job functions, that is when you might need an additional resume. But I think that like having a really good base, and even if you don't want to tweak it, if you are submitting a personalized cover letter, that's also helpful as well. So that's what I would say about that, but it can take some time. And working with somebody can really be helpful. I see another question that says, how often is a cover letter needed when applying to a job? Will the ATS positively consider an applicant as a cover letter? Yes, it will. Because there's a section in ATS systems that has like additional documents. So like they'll actually see it. So if your resume is good, when they pull up your profile, you'll see the cover letter, and the statistic shows that like 2 out of 100 people submit cover letters, which is insane. So having a cover letter is kind of like a hack, because most people think that it's not needed, but if you do put it there and you do spend the time, and it's really great, it will give you an edge. I personally, like, we have about 40 to 50 employees at our company, and the resumes that we get that have cover letters, like, they get a little bit more love. So I would say to definitely do that. You should have that. How does let's see, well, there's a lot of questions here. Let's talk about let's see if I can answer a hard question. Well, a self-employed Okay, let's answer this one. All right. Will a self-employed resume follow the same resume format and up to 2 pages? Is it acceptable to highlight my portfolio work and include the company website? Yes. So when it comes to having some consulting experience, you can definitely put the role that you've performed. So whether it's hey, you was a fractional CTO, you can put that on your resume. It should still have the same design and format. You should still highlight some of the successes. And what you can do is you can link to, whether it's a GitHub or it's a portfolio, you should put that link in your header section. And again, still talk through the accomplishments and the success stories at a high level of what you did across your consulting clients. I think that is really, really good to do. But yes, you don't want to just err on a different side, because like when you're a consultant, like you have like a one pager that's like you're selling to an organization, but that's a lot different than positioning yourself for a job. And sometimes employers may or may not like someone that's too entrepreneurial. So just be very cognizant of not like trying to sell your services to the employer if you're looking for an actual role. We see that a lot, and that doesn't work out well. So just, again, it's about mindset and about articulating what you've done in a way that still resonates from an employee mindset, because coming at it from a consultant mindset may or may not be as helpful. And we've seen that turn some people off before. So just be very cognizant of that. Okay, let's talk about
Brandon, I wonder if you might want to answer one of these questions about how to format promotions or like different levels at the same company on a resume. We've got like a few questions about kind of the same thing. So how
Yeah, okay. So let me see if I can find one for
one is may you cover how to place multiple roles within an organization, promotions, etc., so it doesn't throw an ATS off.
Right. So the key is that if it wasn't a quote unquote promotion and the role stayed the same, you don't necessarily need to like put two, like it's like you were engineer and then like senior engineer, and maybe you just worked across two different like teams or functions, but it's the same role. You don't want to stack those two up. But if it was like an analyst to a senior analyst, like that's okay. I typically only have one or two kind of laterals, so director to senior director for one actual work experience. But that's where LinkedIn comes in, or potentially on your Wellfound profile. Like you can put everything in totality on a separate document, like a LinkedIn or a Wellfound. But in terms of your resumes, the rule of thumb is you don't want to put more than two work titles under one experience section for that specific job, if that makes sense. Because sometimes if you spent 12 years at a company, you might have worked your way up from analyst to director, but you don't want to put, because that would take up your entire 2 pages of your resume, or sometimes even 3. So you want to be very cognizant of that. So the rule of thumb is 2. Everything else can go on a LinkedIn profile if you want to kind of dive a little bit deeper. And that's what we've seen to work well, to still make sure that you're adhering to a 1 or 2-page resume. Otherwise, you're going to be at 4 or 5 pages. And then at that point, that's not going to be helpful.
Awesome. And there's quite a few questions just about like how to cover letters fit into like ATS systems, and what would be your approach to that?
Yeah, the key is that most ATS systems are not like ranking cover letters per se. I don't think that they're doing that, but what I was saying that is that it is a plus, because when they pull up your profile, it's like like all the additional attachments or the separate documents are there. So basically it's like, if it's there, they're going to open it, they're going to click on it, they're going to see it. The key is always going to be your resume. Like that's going to be the creme de la creme of what needs to kind of first get you through, because that's where a majority of the parsing, the matching, sourcing, filtering is based, and the scoring. But those are the things that are like, as soon as they pull up your profile, it's like, oh, this thing is here as well. Let me take a look at it. And I promise you, it's at least going to get skimmed for at least 5 to 7 seconds. So if you have 5 to 7 seconds for a resume, think about, well, your cover letter is also going to get another 5 to 7 seconds as well. So now you have 15 seconds before they're like yay or nay, before putting in the yes or no pile. So that's the general rule of thumb with cover letters, and it does help.
Awesome. Thank you. See what else we've got here. We did have quite a few questions just about like how to summarize a work experience. So like for one was about for like a startup that maybe isn't well known, is it a waste of space on the resume to like put a line about what the workplace was like what kind of product they were producing or anything like that? Or would you, again, like rely on your Wellfound or LinkedIn profile to like expand on that kind of thing?
Yeah, you can do it. Sometimes it could throw off the ATS because if it's not a bullet point and it's under work experience, it might categorize that summary as a bullet point, which you don't want to do because now it can be a little bit weird because how your resume looks is not how it'll appear in the actual ATS system, and you don't have that visibility. So you think it'll just show up the right way, but think about them parsing it down into pieces and then reconstructing that in the different system. And so you got to be very careful there. I'd say that even if it's a startup, if they're interested in what you did at the startup, they're going to then go to your LinkedIn or they're going to Google the company and then go and find more context. So I think that's okay to not put it there. But if you feel like it's super relevant for the role, like you worked at a fintech startup and now you're going to look for a job at Visa or MasterCard or Plaid, right? Like that might catch an eye, but then you can weave that into a bullet point as well, or weave it into your summary as well. So you have many places and levers to pull to be able to still like push what you're trying to articulate. That may or may not be like using an entire line for just a description.
That makes a lot of sense. So helpful. Yeah, let's see. We have a lot of questions. We're not going to get to all of them because we have just a few minutes left. But we can answer a couple more, I think. How do you feel, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm fair game. I'm rocking with Wellfound today, so
Really
we can answer as many questions as we can. We give another five or 10 minutes of questions.
I'm just getting rid of ones that are repeats that we've already answered here. I'm just taking a quick look. Yeah, this is an interesting one. As a graphic designer looking for design roles, it seems it may be harder to show design skills in an ATS format, or I guess an ATS formatted resume. Would it be acceptable to use one formatted for ATS as the main one and a more designed resume and additional documents? Do you have any ideas about like creative, like
yes.
Yeah.
I love that question, right? Because for all my creative folks on the call, we love you and we want to make sure that you can show your design skills. And so two key things there, right? Make sure you have a portfolio that's linked at the top of your resume. I think that's key, and you can even hyperlink it. What you can also do is I tell a lot of the folks that have design backgrounds so that have it on your LinkedIn as well, so that whether it's you design your LinkedIn background perhaps, or I'm not sure if Wellfound you allow them to have like a background header, but you can show design skills there briefly, have a portfolio. You can still talk through like speed to design or what you've designed or what types of things that you do in an ATS format. People are a little bit more lenient when it comes to design roles in particular, because they understand that you do want to let your creativity kind of accentuate through what you're putting together. So there's a little bit of leeway there. I feel like for designers, it's not as stringent. And even if it's not fully optimized, they'll still look at it because they're hiring for design roles. So that's one of those like really small caveats. I wouldn't say that that's the same across every marketing role, but design specifically, what we found is that they're just a little bit more lenient, because even if it doesn't get parsed the right way, they can still just upload, like they can still click and like view the original file, right? And so I would say that you're a little bit okay there, but just rule of thumb, still have the portfolio, and then any other things that you can talk through in terms of your design accomplishments and achievements, whether you created a logo that then got, that kind of blew a company up or something like that. Or you created a design system or design framework, right? Like those are the things that you can still talk through. Those are accomplishments. You implemented a design framework that landed, more usability, right? Like that's still empowering and impactful. That has nothing to do with like how good you are as a UX or UI designer.
Okay, great. And maybe we'll just, no, I think we're at time. It's like 12:59. I think we can wrap up. So there are a lot more questions here. Sorry, my slideshow just flipped. There are still a lot more questions here. And like I said at